Hey guys, this is James.
And this is Denny from TeaDB. We're doing episode 19 today.
Yep.
What do we got in store?
So we have another offering from Floating Leaves, a great tea company, and it's another high mountain tea, and this time it's the Hehuanshan. So this tea is a little bit more expensive than the Alishan tea, which tends to be kind of the lowest priced, kind of the budget high mountain tea. And I really like this tea. It's grown at a higher elevation, about 2,000 meters as opposed to 1,400 meters, meaning that it should be a little bit more forgiving in how we brew it, and it might have even more accentuated kind of high mountain characteristics.
Very cool. How much leaf do you have in here?
So we're using about the same amount of leaf as last time, a little bit more I think,
Cool.
6 grams as opposed to a little bit over 5.
Cool. Looks great. So this is just from visually, I know nothing about this tea, but visually it's a lightly oxidized oolong tea, beautifully rolled. Looks like it's really high quality leaves. There's no like particulate or anything like that. So this is the kind of tea that is so wonderful that you could use. You don't need to have a strainer usually for quality like this. So
No, you don't.
yeah.
And I recently made a visit over to Ballard to visit Floating Leaves, which is where we got this tea. And I paid a lot of attention to how Hehuanshan was brewing her tea. She's the owner over at Floating Leaves. And she has a very, very simple take on kind of water temperature and stuff like that. And I think it could be because her tea just generally is very forgiving, just because it is such high quality. So she'll just go all the way to maximum boil, and she'll just drink and pour water as she needs it until the water gets ridiculously low temperature or she runs out. Very seldom does the water itself go down all the way to a temperature, especially when there's multiple people drinking at her tea table.
Interesting. So we can already see just from the first rinse that the leaves have definitely opened up a fair amount. How hot is the temperature for this?
Yeah, so we're brewing kind of similar to the Alishan. Our first steeps are going to be at a little bit higher temperature, just a little bit off of a boil, so probably 204, 203 degrees, so a pretty hot temperature, and a little bit hotter than we've been brewing in the past. But I'm curious to see how this brewing style, which is similar but not identical, affects the tea.
Cool. Very cool. And in terms of timing, what are you thinking here?
I'm going to do something very similar, go for about 30 seconds, which I think is coming up right about now.
Yep.
So, and I think Denny and I both kind of prescribe to the notion of brewing at about 30 seconds for high mountain teas, and then just seeing how you like the tea and increasing or decreasing that time based on what you're getting off the flavor.
Looks beautiful. Oh, wow. Aroma is very creamy.
Slightly floral.
And then in terms of the saturation of the tea itself, it's actually looking a little bit lighter than the Alishan we had last episode. But doesn't mean anything about the quality per se, just a marker of appearance.
And as the leaves open up, we can expect that color to kind of get deeper in nature. So this tea for me is kind of teasing at that bitterness.
Definitely.
But it's got a very full body, I'd say a little bit more full body than the Alishan, and pretty creamy.
Yeah. Yep. I could definitely... It feels like the bitterness is almost going to come on, but doesn't. I'm getting a similar taste profile as the Alishan, but I totally agree in terms of the body. This is just coming out stronger right out of the gate. Really quite nice for a first steeping.
Yeah. Usually my favorite steepings of the oolong teas tend to be the third or the fourth, sometimes the second. It's almost never the first steeping.
Right.
So it'll be very curious to see how this tea evolves.
Yeah. Cool.
So we're going to make this episode a little bit more free-flowing and kind of ask each other some questions, not maybe necessarily directly related to the Hehuanshan tea. So what have you been drinking lately?
So these days, mornings have been kind of a combination of raw or ripe puer, depending on my stomach, literally, and how much caffeine I feel like consuming. I don't even know if it's necessarily about caffeine, and actually I'm going to do some research myself independently for TeaDB about caffeine and tea. But it seems to be that raw puer, just maybe by virtue of the potency of the flavor, just wakes me up. It's just like, I'm awake. And then in the afternoons, I've been making my way through some of the Yunnan black tea that I've ordered way too much of, like always. So I've been drinking, there's a really beautiful purple variety that's wild picked from the Yunnan. And it's lovely, and actually very consistent in flavor.
And you got that from Yunnan sourcing?
Right. Really tasty.
Yeah, I've had it too. It's very, it has a lot of the characteristics of a Yunnan black, but it's also somewhat different. Mm-hmm. Very, very sweet too.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit like a kind of a a little bit of that sort of spicy smokiness in parts of it. But it's a beautiful looking tea, very, very oxidized, and quite tasty. So these leaves are opening up a ton, we can see. And the vibrance of the green is really intense. We'll see that fade as we keep on steeping the tea and brewing more tea, but for now it's still very green. In terms of the color of the brew now, what do you think?
I'd say it's very similar. Still a little bit paler than our Alishan.
Yep.
Perhaps slightly deeper than before. I actually just used the 30-second steep time for this because I had a feeling kind of the leaves are opening up and stuff like that, and I didn't really want to overbrew too much, but we'll see how this tastes.
Nice.
Very similar, and I'm glad I didn't brew for too much longer.
Totally.
It's definitely kind of teasing at the bitterness.
You know, I'm actually getting a little bit of kind of salty, mineral-y taste. Yeah, not like...
A little bit.
Yeah.
I can see the minerals for sure.
Yeah, totally not in a bad way. This is, again, this similar to the Alishan, this is not coming off with those chocolatey notes or their caramel notes, or not coming off with those super passion fruit notes. It's kind of more vegetal, more grassy, light, but very full-bodied. I mean, this is really showing up on the palate. It's really good. I think the biggest difference is probably the body that I'm experiencing right now.
Yeah, I think it does have a stronger body than the Alishan, which was nice and light. I mean, this tea is very interesting to me, and it just shows that kind of beyond the mainstream mountains of Alishan, Lishan, Shanlinqi, and the Dayuling teas, that there are other tea growing regions within Taiwan. And I talked to Showen a little bit about this. She was like, oh, she recommended this tea. I'm like, Hehuanshan. I've never heard of that. Is that like some other mountain's other name or something like that? Which is usually the case for most Chinese stuff. And she's like, no, I don't even know where it is. But it's a very, very good tea, and I was impressed with it. Definitely kind of an off-brand, though.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing that I'm noticing while letting this sort of sit in my mouth is actually that the longevity of this tea is a little bit longer than the Alishan as well. So I'm definitely still having little peaks of flavor that is lasting longer. It's really nice. It's really wonderful, and it kind of a subtle tea, hard to place, but quite refreshing. Mm-hmm. Really beautiful. So, James, what have you been drinking these days?
I've been drinking a lot of the same stuff. I love raw puer over the summertime. Ripe stuff, I'll do that if I think I got food poisoned or something like that to clear up my stomach. But other than that, which does happen, it's pretty rare for me to drink ripe puer during the summer just because I find it to be very warming to my particular body. I also have a confession to make. I'd been using... like before our last kind of free-flowing episode, Denny and I talked about like using scales and stuff like that just for personal use and measuring out tea. Well, I started to use a scale again occasionally for some of my raw puer, and that's just because I got this brick that's mainly meant for Tibetan monks, and it messed me up. I had like 2 drinks of it, and I was just like, oh, it was like 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. I'm like, ugh, I just felt horrible. And so So I've been trying real hard not to overbrew my tea and to have stuff like that. I think some of it was a byproduct to drinking a tea that my American body was not used to at all.
Well, this is color-wise. This is definitely showing up for the third steeping here. So
Yeah,
deeper
absolutely.
color. I'm getting that again, that kind of mineral-y element to it.
Yeah. I wonder if that has something to do with the terroir. It's something that I don't get all that much from high mountain tea.
Huh.
So I think that's a really interesting observation.
Yeah, this is really lovely. And in terms of just general pricing, maybe relative to an Alishan, how much would this cost? Like 20% more, 10, 5, 50?
Yeah. So on Floating Leaves' website, she's actually sold out of the Alishan, being kind of a name brand. It's unsurprising, and that was priced at $12 an ounce. And this, I believe, was priced at $13.50. So that's like 12 or 13% higher than the Alishan itself. So it's certainly an affordable option, especially if you want to get to those higher regions, like 2,000 meters, something like that. Because generally in that range, you're looking at mainly only the Lishan Mountain. And Lishan tea, as kind of you high mountain connoisseurs know, can be very, very expensive.
That's great.
Yep.
Cool. This is like a good middle ground, basically.
Yep. And I'm also going to give a quick shout out to my Taiwanese Oolong compendium and my High Mountain Guide, both on TeaDB.org. I think they're both really interesting information. They're fascinating to research, and I did my best to make those really complete guides.
They're really good. I learned a lot. They're super thorough. I would say grab some tea, sit down, and give them a read. They're really, really good. Yep, totally impressed. So, to find more information about this tea, what should people do?
So they should visit TeaDB.org, and we have a lot of great information. We've been starting to expand on kind of our article database. I think Denny's going to start to do a few things on kind of like chemicals and tea and just kind of the compounds within tea itself, which is really interesting stuff. And we'll continue to do these weekly podcasts. So we will see you guys next time.
Cheers.